Imagine this. You're standing in the middle of a massive underground vault, filled with flashing lights, ancient scrolls, quantum computers, and the whispers of lost knowledge. You've spent your entire life searching for the secret, the one idea that changes everything. The door creaks open. A figure steps in, cloaked, silent, glowing with the kind of calm that only comes from knowing something the rest of the world missed. You ask them for the truth, the ultimate wisdom. And they look you in the eyes and say one word: simplicity. You laugh. Surely it can't be that. But the moment you dismiss it, the door slams shut. You were too complex to see the obvious.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
That's how it begins. For most of us, we are addicted to complexity. We believe that the more complicated a solution is, the more intelligent it must be. But the greatest minds in history, the ones who shaped human consciousness, all converged on the same realization: the deepest truths are simple. Not simplistic, not vague, but clear, clean, and elemental. Einstein said, "Everything should be made as simple as possible, but not simpler." That's not a cliché. That's a map. We live in a world that worships noise. Notifications, opinions, data, layers of distraction masquerading as information. We are taught to equate more with better, more options, more apps, more ideas, more speed. But what if that's the lie? What if the truth is this: the fewer moving parts, the more powerful the machine. The fewer desires, the more peaceful the mind. The fewer self-deceptions, the more radiant the soul. That's the hidden power of simplicity. And only 1% truly understand it, because the other 99% are too busy chasing complexity, mistaking motion for meaning. Let me ask you a question that might change everything. What if your suffering isn't caused by what you lack, but by what you're holding on to that you don't need? What if your anxiety, your confusion, your burnout all stem from a refusal to let go? We build these elaborate systems to manage life, but life doesn't need to be managed. It needs to be felt. It needs to be seen, not solved. The more we try to engineer peace, the more we lose it. Simplicity is the art of subtraction, not addition. It's the discipline of letting go. And that's terrifying, because letting go means confronting the silence beneath the noise. The silence where truth lives. Most people avoid that silence their entire lives. But the few who enter it, who strip away the unnecessary, who walk into the void willingly, they discover something the world cannot teach. They discover clarity. Lao Tzu said, "To attain knowledge, add things every day. To attain wisdom, remove things every day." These ancient words are more relevant now than ever. In a world bloated on stimulation and choices, the path to power is in narrowing the channel, not widening it. Consider this: you don't need more time. You need fewer distractions. You don't need more followers. You need more focus. You don't need more goals. You need more truth. There's a moment in every philosopher's path, a breaking point. Not a breakdown from weakness, but a breakthrough from excess. You realize that complexity is not intelligence. It's often a defense mechanism. We complicate our lives to avoid the simple truths that would shatter our illusions. We say relationships are complicated, but maybe the truth is we're afraid to be honest. We say success is complicated, but maybe the truth is we're afraid to commit. Simplicity is not easy. It's the most radical choice you can make. Think of the greatest spiritual traditions. The Buddha sat under a tree. Jesus walked barefoot. Diogenes lived in a barrel. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, wrote to himself in a simple journal. Not one of them found power in accumulation, but in stripping away. Why? Because truth doesn't need decoration. It shines on its own. Here's the twist. Simplicity is not about deprivation. It's about precision. It's about tuning your life like a master musician tunes a single string. Not too loose, not too tight, just enough tension to sing. But most of us, we've got 50 strings all tangled up, all out of tune, and we wonder why we can't hear the music. Simplicity is the act of cutting away what doesn't belong until only the essential remains. And when that happens, something magical appears, effortless power. You felt it before. That moment when everything just clicks, when time slows down, when the right words come, when the answer is obvious. That's simplicity in action. O is the child of focus, and focus is born from the womb of simplicity. You cannot enter flow with a cluttered mind. You cannot enter mastery with divided attention. You must choose. And the moment you do, you begin to see what the 1% have always seen, that less is not loss. Less is liberation. Let me tell you a story. There was a monk who walked into a crowded temple where 100 people were meditating. He looked around and said, "Too much noise." But the temple was silent. The abbot asked, "What do you mean?" The monk replied, "Too many minds." That's the world we live in today. Too many minds, too many tabs open, too many opinions, too many goals, and not enough being, not enough presence, not enough simplicity. What would happen if you closed the tabs? Not just on your browser, but in your life. What if you deleted the apps that waste your time? What if you stopped saying yes to things that don't align with your soul? What if you stopped performing for people who don't even see you? Could you handle what's left? Could you handle the truth of your own essence, unfiltered, unmasked, undistracted? This is the confrontation most avoid, because simplicity reveals what complexity hides. It reveals your deepest fears, your unmet needs, your unspoken desires. When you strip down your life, there's nowhere to hide, but there's also nowhere to fall. Because what remains when all else is stripped away is you, real, raw, radiant. We think we need more to be enough. But what if the opposite is true? What if everything you're seeking is buried under layers of complexity you don't actually need? Epictetus said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." This is not about minimalism as a trend. This is about essentialism as a way of being. It's about knowing what matters and ruthlessly cutting what doesn't. Simplicity doesn't mean your life becomes boring. It means your life becomes aligned. It means every action flows from a clear center. Every yes is a full yes. Every no is clean. No guilt, no drama, just clarity. And from that clarity comes a kind of peace that's not passive, it's powerful. It's the peace of knowing you are exactly where you need to be, doing exactly what you need to do, with zero residue. Now I'll ask you the hardest question of all. What are you willing to let go of to finally live in truth? An identity? A dream that isn't yours? A relationship built on performance? A habit that numbs you just enough to survive, but never enough to thrive? Simplicity demands sacrifice. But what you're sacrificing is not your soul, it's the noise that's drowning it. The reason only 1% understand this is because the other 99% are too afraid to stop, to pause, to question, to let go. But if you're here, listening to this, maybe you're already part of the 1%, not because you've mastered it, but because you're willing to look. And that willingness is the beginning of everything. Simplicity is not the absence of depth. It is the concentration of it. A laser is just light, focused. A master is just a student, simplified. And you are already whole, already powerful. You just forgot. Simplicity is the remembering. Now that the veil has been lifted, we're no longer talking about simplicity as a concept. We're talking about it as a path, a living force that's waiting for you to walk into it. But here's where things get real. Because simplicity isn't achieved through thinking alone, it's achieved through unbecoming. We're conditioned to believe we must accumulate our worth, that we must build an identity, construct a brand, stack achievements. But in truth, the most powerful identities are the ones that arise from shedding what never belonged in the first place. You don't become free by adding things. You become free by removing what you're not. And this is where the hidden power shows up. Because when you begin to subtract with intention, you start to see what's actually driving your life. Most people say they want peace, but they chase chaos. They say they want clarity, but they consume noise. They say they want love, but they build walls of performance and fear. Simplicity doesn't lie, it reveals. And most people aren't ready to see what's underneath their complexity. Are you? Let's look at the mind. Your mind is not built to thrive in chaos. It's not designed to juggle 8 priorities, 15 apps, 3 time zones, and an endless stream of urgent messages. The mind, at its best, is a still lake. But most of us live like we're swimming in a tidal wave of our own making. And the tragedy is, we think we're being productive. But what if productivity isn't about doing more, but doing less better? Seneca once said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." Simplicity is the antidote to waste. It's the discipline of choosing what matters before life forces you to. And here's a secret that only the 1% know. Simplicity is not about rules. It's about rhythm. It's about creating a life that flows, where your energy is not scattered but channeled. And when you live in rhythm, you don't need motivation, you have momentum. Let me give you an example. Imagine waking up with a mind that isn't already overwhelmed. No flood of notifications. No mental checklist of 10 things you hate but have to do. Just stillness, breath, a clear sense of what needs your attention and what doesn't. That's not a fantasy. That's what happens when you eliminate the non-essential. But it requires fierce clarity, and fierce clarity only comes when you're willing to disappoint the people who benefit from your confusion. Because let's be honest, your complexity serves others. It makes you easier to control. If you're always busy, you don't question the system. If you're always anxious, you don't rebel. If you're always chasing the next thing, you don't ask the most important questions. Is this what I actually want? Does this align with who I am? Simplicity is rebellion. It's spiritual warfare against a culture that profits from your distraction. And in this rebellion, something incredible happens. Your intuition gets louder. You begin to feel when something is off. You notice the weight of fake conversations. You sense the exhaustion that comes from pretending. You hear your body saying no when your mouth says yes. And then you align them. Suddenly, your no becomes sacred. Your yes becomes powerful. You stop leaking energy. You stop betraying yourself. But this shift is not always celebrated. The moment you simplify, people will say you're being selfish. They'll say you've changed, and they're right. You have changed. You've stopped living for applause. You've stopped chasing validation. You've stopped performing the role of the overachiever, the fixer, the constant giver. You've chosen yourself. And that, to a society addicted to complexity, looks like rebellion. But rebellion is not destruction. It's return. A return to what matters. A return to your own center. A return to a life where your energy is not hijacked by algorithms, opinions, and obligations that don't align with your truth. And from this return, your power begins to rise, not as a performance, but as presence. Let's talk about presence. Real presence is rare. Most people are not really here. They're half scrolling, half listening, half living. But presence is what transforms ordinary moments into sacred experiences. And presence is born from simplicity. When your life is no longer cluttered, your attention becomes a weapon. You see clearly. You listen deeply. You respond wisely. And that kind of presence? It's magnetic. It heals. It leads. It awakens. You don't need to have all the answers to be wise. You just need to be clear. And clarity comes from subtraction. From asking often, does this serve the life I'm committed to building? If not, let it go. Let the text go. Let the extra project go. Let the guilt go. Let the version of you that was built to please others go. You're not here to be everything for everyone. You're here to be you completely. And when you strip away what isn't you, you discover something stunning. You are already enough. Not when you finish the degree. Not when you hit the goal. Not when everyone approves. Right now. In this breath. In this being. Simplicity is the portal to that realization. And once you taste it, you can't go back. Consider this. If your house was on fire, what would you grab? The answer is always simple, because fire reveals what matters. Simplicity is like that. It burns away the fluff. It forces you to confront the truth of your attachments. Most of us are hoarding emotional clutter. Old dreams, old identities, old obligations. And they weigh us down. Simplicity is the fire that frees you. But here's the twist. Simplicity also amplifies everything that's real. Love gets deeper. Focus gets sharper. Joy becomes purer. Because you're no longer distracted by the noise. You're no longer deluded. You're present. And that presence is where beauty lives. Not in the complexity of achievement, but in the elegance of enough. Let me ask you something only you can answer. What are you doing right now that's stealing your peace? Not in a dramatic, obvious way, but in a subtle, daily way. What conversations leave you drained? What habits leave you empty? What goals no longer feel like yours? Those are the threads. Pull them. Let them unravel. And as they do, you'll find something beneath it all, a quiet truth waiting patiently. That truth is this: you don't need to become someone else to be powerful. You just need to become less of what you're not, less pretending, less performing, less proving. That's the path. And it's not a straight line. It's a spiral. You return to the same lessons, but each time with more depth, more awareness, more courage to let go. Remember what Leonardo da Vinci said: simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. That's not a design principle, it's a philosophy of life. The most elegant systems are the simplest. The most profound truths are the clearest. The most powerful people are the most aligned. And alignment is impossible without simplicity. You are not here to be busy. You are here to be brilliant. But brilliance does not come from overwork. It comes from precision, from knowing what matters, from saying no to greatness so you can say yes to genius. And genius is always simple. It speaks in few words. It moves with clarity. It creates with depth. So let me leave you with this: simplicity is not the end of your journey. It's the beginning of your real one. The one that isn't filtered through expectations. The one that isn't diluted by distractions. The one that feels like home. That's the hidden power. And it's been waiting for you this whole time. Now that we've walked through the fire of clarity, stripped away the unnecessary, and stood exposed in the raw truth of our being, it's time to talk about what happens next. Because once you begin to live in simplicity, the world doesn't just look different, it is different. You've stepped into a frequency most people never access. And from this place, everything changes, not because the world has changed, but because you have. The hidden power of simplicity isn't just that it makes life easier. That's just the surface. The real power is that it unlocks inner mastery. When your mind is no longer a battleground of competing voices, you begin to hear the one voice that matters, the one inside you. The quiet one. The wise one. The one that always knew. This is what the mystics meant when they spoke of the still small voice within. It was never gone. It was just buried under layers of noise you thought you needed. And when you live from that voice, your whole life becomes lighter. Decisions feel obvious. Relationships become cleaner. You no longer cling to what drains you, and you no longer chase what doesn't resonate. You begin to trust your own rhythm. You realize you don't need to move faster, you need to move truer. That's what simplicity gives you, not speed, but alignment. Not efficiency, but essence. But here's where it gets deeper. Simplicity doesn't just change the way you live, it changes the way you see. You start noticing beauty where you never saw it before. The single leaf in the wind. The silence between words. The presence of someone who is actually listening. Simplicity sharpens your perception. It turns down the volume of distraction so you can hear the sacred in the ordinary. And suddenly, everything becomes meaningful, not because it changed, but because you did. There's a Japanese concept called shibumi. It means effortless perfection, quiet elegance, understated excellence. That's what we're talking about now. A life that doesn't scream for attention but radiates depth. A mind that doesn't race but penetrates. A presence that doesn't dominate but transforms. And to access that level of being, you must live with intentional simplicity. You must be willing to do what most won't, delete the unnecessary. Not just in your space, but in your beliefs, in your language, in your identity. Because here's the truth. You are not your story. You are not your resume. You are not your trauma. You are the awareness beneath it all. And the more you simplify, the closer you get to that awareness. Until one day you don't need to chase anything. You don't need to become anything. You just are. Fully, freely, finally. But let's be real. This kind of simplicity scares people because it demands responsibility. You can't blame complexity anymore. You can't hide behind being busy. You can't pretend you don't know what you want. Simplicity removes your excuses. It puts you face to face with your freedom. And freedom is terrifying for those who've lived their whole lives in cages built from overthinking. So ask yourself, what cage have I mistaken for safety? Is it your job, your reputation, your routine, your self-image? Simplicity doesn't just open the door, it demands you walk through it. And when you do, you'll lose some things. Comfort, familiarity, predictability. But what you gain is worth everything: sovereignty, clarity, peace. And peace is not the absence of problems. It's the presence of truth. Let's go even further. Simplicity is not just a life strategy. It's a spiritual technology. It's the method by which the soul reclaims its throne. Every great awakening in history, personal or collective, begins with a stripping away. Moses in the desert, Buddha under the Bodhi tree, Christ in the wilderness. All of them went into the silence and returned with truth. Why? Because silence is the language of simplicity. And in that silence, the soul speaks. The 1% who understand this don't just simplify their schedules. They simplify their selves. They sit in the fire of discomfort until the distractions burn off. They stop numbing. They stop blaming. They stop running. And once the running stops, clarity floods in. Not from outside, from within. That's when you realize you were never lost. You were just buried. So let's get brutally practical. What does it look like to live this way? It looks like waking up and not checking your phone for the first hour. It looks like deleting apps that serve algorithms more than your soul. It looks like saying no to things that were only ever yeses because of guilt or fear. It looks like designing your environment for focus, not entertainment. It looks like giving your full attention to one thing at a time and feeling that thing deeply. It looks like having fewer friends, but truer ones, fewer goals, but deeper ones. Fewer possessions, but more meaning in each. It looks like finding enough in what you already have, Not because you're settling, but because you're finally awake to what's real. And this transformation is contagious. When you live simply, you become a mirror. You reflect back to others what they've forgotten, that peace is possible, that clarity is available, that life doesn't have to be a constant sprint towards some distant someday. You become a living permission slip for others to slow down, to breathe, to return. Simplicity is a revolution, not with protest signs, but with presence, not with noise, but with depth. And the world doesn't know what to do with someone who is truly present, because presence is rare. Presence is powerful. Presence is what every soul is starving for, but doesn't know how to name. But you, if you walk this path, you'll know. You'll wake up one day and feel it. The quiet, the clarity, the power that doesn't shout. And you'll realize this is it. This is what you were chasing all along. Not the money, not the fame, not the validation, but this simplicity, this alignment, this freedom to be exactly who you are, without apology, without noise, without distortion. And now you face a choice. You can go back to the complexity, back to the performance, back to the noise. Or you can go forward into the unknown, into the simplicity, into the truth of your own being. One path is comfortable, the other is true. Which one will you choose? Because simplicity isn't for everyone. It's for the 1% who are ready to remember who they are. And now you know. So what will you let go of today? What noise will you silence? What truth will you finally live?